Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Ben Fisk for the Darkfall Protocol. If you haven't seen my video on the Pristine 15, I would recommend you go check that out just for some helpful context. Otherwise, let's dive right in. So the Dirty 30 is the second iteration of the Vile Miles achievements. It was created as a follow-up to the Pristine 15. Now, as you might remember, the Pristine 15 only took about 3.5 hours and was overall an incredibly enjoyable experience. So, I figured it's twice the distance, it's 30 miles this time, therefore, it's going to take twice the time, right? So I should be able to get this done in about, 7 hours? The day of, I started making phone calls to basically anybody who I could think that might be in Fort Collins, and I eventually managed to wrangle a crew together. And I'm like, alright, we absolutely have to be out of here by 12:30. So 1:15 rolls around, and my crew finally shows up. So it's Dave, who is my cameraman, Temby, who's the director of technical communications, Matt, who's my current roommate, it's Earl, who I guess is our intern, it's Chris, who hasn't done anything with us since. And then you got me, in the trunk, blindfolded, looking for all the world like a hostage exchange. The one thing I do pay attention to is toward the end, I start thinking, okay, any big turns, I have to remember these because that's going to tell me the opposite direction that I need to go. And sure enough, we eventually take this huge left. So I'm like, alright, eventually I'm going to want to go right. Then we go straight for quite some time, like probably another 20-25 minutes. And then they stop, and I'm like, okay, we made it here. Let's see how bad this is going to get. So I get out, and I've still got the blindfold on, and they're all taking pictures and doing the thumbs up. So they kind of pat me, and they're like, alright, is there anything else you need? And I'm like, no, I can't take the blindfold off until you've left. Good luck, guys. And so even over the music, I strain to hear, and I can hear the direction that the car takes off from. So I am left in this field. I give them about, 30 seconds to drive away. I take a breath, and I say, alright, round 2, here we go. And I take the blindfold off, and there's nothing. And I look down the road to my right, and there's nothing. And I look down the road to my left, and there's nothing. And I look in the field behind me, and there's nothing. I am in the middle of nowhere. So I look around, and I'm like, alright, Dave, this is pretty good. So I take a quick selfie to be like, alright, I'm determined. Here's me, I'm gonna get this done in 7.5 hours. Oh, boy. And then I just start walking. And so I'm making my way down this road, and it's pretty, it's interesting, it's nice. There's a fair amount of stuff to look at. It's a dirt road for quite a while, but eventually it gives way to asphalt, and then the monotony remains pretty stable. Eventually, off in the distance, I see this road, and I can see cars driving on it, like the first cars I've seen. No one's even been on this road that I've been walking down. I'm like, okay, good, I'm actually making my way towards civilization. So I make it up there, and it turns out that the road that I've been walking on is called Vermilion Road. Now, what's so big about Vermilion Road? I see that, and I look down both ways, and I remember, okay, we took the hard left, so I'm going to be wanting to take a right here. And so I turn to my right, and it's just endless. And this is where the concept of infinities entered my vocabulary. So when I'm doing the Vile Miles, an infinity is a stretch of road that is so long that I cannot tell where it ends. This is the first one, but there are plenty more after this. So I'm looking down this infinity, and I'm like, alright, I don't have a choice. It's about 80 degrees, but I'm walking next to a highway. There's cars, it's loud, all of the heat is being reflected back up from the road. It is not a pleasant experience. So I'm walking, apparently the school buses offload right off of the highway, and if that's not fun enough, then the infamous cemetery sign is only 20 yards past the school bus loading sign. And there's people that actually live behind this sign. Can you imagine moving and it's like, yeah, no, that sign's gonna be in your front yard basically forever. And in case that isn't creepy enough, the graveyard's across the street. So I make it to the second infinity. I crest this hill, and I'm like, okay, this is gonna get better. And it's like, nope, you got one more to go, my friend. And I'm like, ah, crap. At this point, it's been about 2 hours, and for the last hour and 15, I've been alongside of a highway. So I'm walking, and I see this sign for Larimer County. Now, Larimer County is the county that I live in. That's where Fort Collins is. And so I remember that my internal monologue was, I haven't even been in the right county this whole time? So that was a little frustrating, but at least it let me know that I was going the right direction. So it's been about 2.5 hours when I find this, and of course, all I can do is just keep walking. credit where it's due. It's not a bad walk. It is a long walk. After 3 hours, I finally see a stoplight. And this is literally the first electricity that I've seen in 3 hours. So I'm walking, and I come upon this sign. Now, I kind of know where Berthoud is, but only in the sense that it's south of Loveland, which is south of Fort Collins. Right off the bat, this sign infuriates me. It calls itself the Garden Spot of Colorado, yet not only is the sun setting, but everything in the picture is dead because it's winter. It's like, what's the point? What's the point of that sign, Berthoud? Come on. Immediately, I'm like, all right, I'm not feeling Berthoud too much. And then I take a couple steps past that, and here are the directions that they choose to give me. Carter Lake and museum. So I make it up to the stoplight and I'm like, all right, I'm going to be able to figure out what highway this is. Everything's going to be okay. And I see that it's 287. And at this point in my life, I don't know what that means. I don't know what 287 turns into. I don't know where 287 is. So I'm like, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn inward and I'm going to head toward the foothills and I'm just going to walk along the foothills until I figure out where I am. So that's when I reach the third infinity. And I start walking along it, and again, it's gorgeous, it's scenic, it's giving me things to look at, but I have been walking for about 4 hours right now. My legs are turning to rubber. Things are not going swimmingly. Nonetheless, I keep trucking down it, and I keep walking past farms and things like that. I see ponds like this, and this was actually right after the summer in which I did mosquito control. That is a story in and of itself. But so I'm walking past this pond and I'm seeing it. It's kind of making me just internally scream. But there's nothing I can do about it, so I just have to keep trucking on. So I keep going, and eventually I reach this bend in the road. That is the road that I walked when I was doing the Dirty 30. That is also the road, and that is the way that I'm headed. It's just an unending stretch north, and that's kind of what I had been hoping for, so this is good. It doesn't let me know where I am yet, but at least I'm going in the right direction. Eventually I see this sign off in the distance, so I look at it, and I see this, and I remember that my internal monologue, verbatim, was, "Checkmate, motherf***!" I eat 2 oranges and a protein bar, and I'm like, alright, I know Loveland like the back of my hand, I just have to get there. I'm close, this is gonna be easy. No. That was when I ran into the 4th infinity. So all I can do is just keep walking across this infinity as the sun setting. Again, the entire walk was picturesque. It was a very beautiful hell that I subjected myself to. So at this point, the sun has really started to set. So I'm walking, I'm going along this. I hit the 5th infinity right as the sun is setting. For some reason, it looks a lot brighter in this picture. So the sun sets completely, and I'm like, all right, it is actually very cold. The temperature drops about 20 degrees in maybe half an hour. So I throw on my gear, and I try to get another selfie, and it doesn't work. I accidentally just take a picture of the jacket, and at this point, I don't even care. So I made it through 2 infinities, and then I crashed in the parking lot of this high school for like 20 minutes. So eventually I find Wilson, and Wilson turns into Taft, which is one of the major roads in Fort Collins. More importantly, it's the one that leads across this giant plain between the 2 cities. So I'm like, oh, thank God. I found it. I now know where I am. I can follow this road home. Successfully made it through Loveland. I'm about to enter the final infinity, which is the Taft Hill stretch between Loveland and Fort Collins. There's nothing. There's no streetlights. There's no place for me to stand. It is just blackness. At this point, it's probably about 9:30, 10 at night, somewhere in there. To give you a scale of just how bad it was, I have 5 Louis C.K. albums on my iPod. I listened to all of them in the time it took me to get back to Fort Collins. And so I'm walking along, and I'm like, how could this possibly get any worse? And a cop car pulls up, and I'm like, you've got to be freaking kidding me. I am out of it. I can barely string a sentence together. I'm like, he's gonna think I am so freaking drunk. So he gets out of the car, and immediately he's like, you're not in trouble, you're not in trouble. I just want to talk. And I'm like, okay. So, what are you doing out here? I started a really long walk. I'm trying to see if I can walk home. That's really all there is to it. All right. Well, do you want to ride? No, thank you. But I gotta keep walking. Like, all right. Well, I'm gonna be patrolling this stretch. So if you need anything, flag me down. It was actually kind of comforting because truly, like, I did see his car like 3 more times while I was on this expanse, and I'm like, wow, this guy is actually kind of watching out for me. I'm back in my home territory. It has been, I don't know, 10.5 hours of straight walking. Literally once a block, I had to stop and take a 5-minute breather because I just couldn't keep going. So I make it back to my house. It is almost 2 o'clock in the morning. I take the time to get one selfie because I know that I need to have photographic evidence of what I was feeling. I didn't shower, I didn't even change. I just collapsed into bed. This is as close to being broken and truly giving up on an achievement as I have ever come. But I made it. And that was one of the more defining moments of my life, to be completely honest. This was the hardest thing I've ever had to do, and just knowing I could get through it, it's an indescribable feeling. So that is the history of the Vile Miles up to this point. Of course, it is not finished. There is one more, the Undead 100. And hopefully, in the next year, we will be able to see how that goes. That will be the first 4-part achievement that I complete. That will easily be the most points I've ever racked up, and it probably will be the hardest thing that I do, except for maybe this. So, I am just as excited for it as all of you are. Until next time, I suppose, this is Ben Fisk for the Darkfall Protocol, signing off.